this year. Just do this, great. So we'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. First up on the agenda is public comment period. I know, Marjorie, you mentioned that we do not have any public comment.
We had one request that was made outside of the time limit. There's a 1 hour time limit before the meeting that we have to have the comment request in, and this was within an hour of the meeting.
Okay.
So, and I believe that's the only one.
All right, so at this time, we do not have any public comment. Next up is the items for discussion, which is number one, presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of BPUB's financial performance report for the period ending February 28th. Are we going to go ahead and jump into that, Mike, or do we have?
Well, yeah, in the interest of time, maybe we can start off with item number 3.
Okay. Item number 3 is presentation and discussion of timeline regarding BPUB's bond ordinance, section 33L, special covenants on the disposition of the system or any significant or substantial part thereof related to proposed uses or distribution of the Tenaska Equity Fund.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Monica Cavazos, Director of Finance. We have been meeting.
Can you speak into the microphone? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Somebody who tends to do this.
My
remotely.
apologies. Okay. We have been bringing y'all regular updates on the timing of our schedule on the steps that we're taking to comply with Section 33L of the bond covenants in regards to disposition of the $29 million Tenaska Equity Fund. And so we have been meeting regularly with Schneider Engineering. They've had data requests. They've given us some draft financial forecasts. We do meet with them on a regular basis, and we have made some changes to the schedule. We are on track for them to give us a draft report on Monday of their final report, a draft that we can then share with the rating agencies. We've already been in contact with our financial advisor and our bond counsel to schedule those meetings. We want to review the report, the draft report on Monday when we receive it, discuss it among ourselves, and then schedule those meetings for early next week with the rating agencies. With all for the bond covenants, we have to have the review by any rating agencies that rated our outstanding senior lien debt. And so that will be Moody's, Fitch, and S&P. We'll have to have all three. So we will schedule those calls early next week with them. We anticipate having the final draft from Schneider Engineering, the final report on Monday, the 17th. There is a regularly scheduled city commission meeting on Tuesday, April 18th. So we will require a special board meeting on Tuesday, the 18th at noon, if possible. Or Monday evening, Monday the 17th, either way, we will get the final draft. And so after we have that final draft report, the final report from the Schneider, then we would need a board meeting and then take it to the city commission on the 18th. And then we will file our necessary documents on Emma, on the Emma website. And again, take it to the commission. So we are still on track. We had to compress the timeline, but Schneider has been very cooperative with us. They reach out when they have questions. And so we've had regular dialogue with them. They've been very cooperative and very helpful and compressing their timetable for us. And so we are still our end date, although we've had to make changes within the individual timeline, the individual milestones, we are still on target for mid-April.
Okay.
To take it to the commission.
Great. So have we been in contact with the commission with this timeline, or are they aware that they may have that as an agenda item on the 18th?
Other than in the discussions that you all have had with them at the joint subcommittee, I have not submitted that to the committee, to the city yet.
Yeah, we've been talking to them about it, but I think updating the timeline and then, if we really think this is going to happen, starting to figure out that special meeting, right?
We will submit the agenda packet to the city.
We've got, I know Elizabeth is here and Marina is there as well. And so I think given that it's 2 weeks away, it'd be good to have those conversations to make sure we can clear any hurdles in time for that meeting.
Yeah, that is the one date that has not changed from the very first timetable that we presented that date for the April 18th city commission meeting is the one date that has remained constant. So
Right.
And
So, yeah,
thank
we
you
have
for that. You guys
communicated
have
that.
been- I know you guys have really been jumping over lots of hurdles to get this done. Now, a very important question. So let's assume, I can't imagine the city commission doesn't. Let's assume they approve this. What else do you need from the board to just start, releasing the money?
Um, hmm. Well, on the 17th, we can make a recommendation, I guess, for the board to allow us to distribute. Well, it really depends on the subcommittee, how they, so we might have to come back to the board after the 17th to then get approval from the board as to how we are going to end up distributing that 29 million,
Okay.
The
So maybe a
methodology.
subcommittee meeting following, again,
following the final report.
following the final report, and then assuming that the city commission, authorizes the plan, perhaps a subcommittee meeting immediately following.
Right.
And then we probably have to schedule another special board meeting with the board.
Can we do that before? Only because I'd rather not push. So, staff has worked so hard to keep this deadline. I'd rather not delay anymore. So if there's anything we can do over the next 2 weeks to just make it so that Mike can, press a button and, the 29 million is on its way. Still 29 million, right?
It's still 29 million. We do-
Although
Let me just add real quick.
We do
We
have-
have an item for
Yeah.
board consideration. I know at the subcommittee, some of the members did express an interest in applying the interest that was earned over the $29 million over the period to be added to the distribution. So that'll be a board decision
I think, obviously, that should be discussed here. Ultimately, that'll likely be a decision for the full board.
for the full board. So we are taking that item at the
We've
April
got
10th.
that on the agenda.
Yes.
It is on the agenda for Monday.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the faster we can move on it, the better. I just feel like there are certain things that need to happen first. And so I'd hate to have some of those meetings without being able to take any actual action.
This would be something to clarify to, actually authorize the distribution. Do we need city commission approval first? I mean, or can we authorize the distribution and, just authorize the plan and everything else and just wait for city commission to, like, I don't want to be the long pole in this tent if possible.
Yeah, I believe that the ultimate decision is going to be the BPP board. The funds reside with us. And so that if the city is aware of the plan and they approve of it, then there shouldn't be an issue. But the decision or the approval needs to come from the BPP board.
And as part of that resolution that'll be presented to the city commission on the 18th, the plan will lay out how that reimbursement or that rebate will be applied to the customers.
I don't believe that was the intent of that resolution. The resolution is just the intent that we met all the requirements of section 33L and that again, our customers are not going to suffer from.
Right, we've had meetings with the city commission about, the plan, and we've talked to them about how we plan on rebating the money.
Yeah.
So I think waiting for any more input would just delay the situation.
No, I'm not suggesting that we wait much longer, but I do think it would be prudent to have them formally acknowledge or sign off to avoid any trouble, post-implementation. I mean, I think, like you said, it lies with the board, but ultimately, whether it's 29 million or 30 million or whatever the amount ends up being, I think it's important to have some formal acknowledgement of that plan so that if there are any questions, they come up in the next 2 weeks versus a month from now after the money's been repaid.
So you suggest we include, asking them for approval for the actual disbursement plan?
At the very least, have some feedback and input. I mean, I would guess that we could invite city staff over or perhaps their auditor to come over and take a look at what we have here at the office and run through a couple of the examples and understand the formula so that in the event that any city commissioners have questions, city staff is just as informed as PUB staff, and they're available to answer those questions for them. Because there will surely be questions in the future about how all of that was calculated and how it was paid out. I'm suggesting we move quickly to make sure that they have those answers.
Oh, I think communication is absolute key, and I think getting this out in front of the city is important. I still think, though, we should honor our
Absolutely.
timeline, unless something crazy comes up in the rating.
Yeah, no, and I'm not suggesting we change any of these timelines, but perhaps, again, and we have some city staff members here, perhaps we can relay that message and have a way to have them come to our office and go through those numbers and get a detailed explanation of how that.
We had those discussions just a while ago at your direction, and so we can schedule something for next week, next week, so that we can review that process and that data that we have available for that process.
That way, if any questions come up, they come up now. And hopefully we can address all of that before the 18th, for the 17th, we have our board.
So
Are we thinking we're gonna have our board meeting on the 18th or the 17th?
I don't have a calendar right now. Let's see.
The schedule just sets it tentatively for the 18th, but it would have to be a noon meeting.
And
I would like to add in our internal audit and communications with the city's internal auditing department and has an open line. So in this case, we'll integrate into the system to ensure that that process is also a part of that there. So she's here and I don't want to speak for her. She shook her head and she said, yes, she understood.
Right, or this week if possible. I mean, we already have the draft numbers. The distribution by KWH, we've got something that we can share or.
The KWH data, we do. I know that they've done some sample reports, and so we should be able to, it just really depends on what the amount of money is going to be distributed back.
Okay.
Whether those funds get redirected elsewhere or.
We do have several questions that were raised, that were discussed at the last joint subcommittee meeting. Some of the technicalities of allocating portions of the 29 million to either low customer assistance programs or to rebate programs, and the issues of bills that were paid through the assistance programs. And so we've reached out to special counsel to request information on all of those and clarification to make sure, what we are authorized and legally able to do as far as allocating those funds all to the rebate to the customer or to different uses. And so those are some questions that we will follow up with. We haven't gotten answers to all of them yet, but we'll follow up with special counsel and get those answers.
Right.
So that we know what that's a key part of the implementation plan.
Sure, and we should have those answers before the 18th
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, we should have them this week.
this week.
Definitely important to get the legalities of that
Yep.
one correct. Okay, yeah, would it make sense to, I don't know when the next city commission meeting is.
The
April the
It's that
18th.
one, okay, so we couldn't pre-present anything, so we've already had discussions at the joint commission meeting.
Yep.
And,
I think my only concern there is that they may be at the joint commission or at the joint committee meeting level. I don't know how involved the other commissioners or the rest of staff is. And so I just want to make sure we get as much transparency and as much communication out there as possible from now until the 18th to avoid the issues down the road where, somebody is unfamiliar with what was decided at the committee level and then has a concern or a thought that they wanted to share.
so maybe.
Now, the subcommittee hasn't made up, or hasn't given us direction though. We did provide some examples of saying if we were to distribute back based on how we collected at KWH. We provided some estimates as to how much the residentials, commercials, average would be expecting to be returned back to them. But that's all we did. And we didn't get any direction from the subcommittee as to how the committee was to distribute that 29. So we might need to hold another, subcommittee meeting so that we can get that direction.
So maybe, and this is just, again, spitballing, would it make sense just, board, let's approve the plan, and we can even discuss it next Monday, and then present it to the city commission. And, if the city commission says, no, absolutely, this makes no sense, go back and do it again. Well, we go back and do it again. But at least, if they're happy with it, then there is no delay. If everybody's on board,
Yeah.
the 18th city commission says thumbs up, this is a great plan, guys, let's go. And then if it turns out that they hate the idea, well, that's when we hit pause, but only,
Yeah.
after we know that nobody likes it.
No, I think that makes sense. The only thing I'd like to encourage is that from now until then, we have as much communication with their.
Oh,
staff as
absolutely.
possible, so that city commissioners more than likely will turn to their staff with any questions, right? And so we want them to be as informed as possible. We want the process to be as transparent as possible, and we want them to have access to as much data as possible. Because like we've said in the past, we're looking at a lot of data. I mean, over 10 million data points, right?
Yes.
And so we want to make sure that it's clear to them and that they have all the answers that they need by that meeting. And they could ultimately not approve it that Tuesday, but I think we want to get to a point where everyone's on board with the plan.
Right. And, where if they aren't on board with the plan, if there's significant questions, saying, okay, let's really address those. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. All right. You don't need a recommendation from this committee.
Other than, we do have this on the agenda for Monday's board meeting to update the full board on the timetable. And other than the scheduling of a special board meeting, either Monday or Tuesday, the 17th or 18th. There's no other action needed at this point.
All right. Right. Anything to add, everyone?
No.
If I can put my finger on the scale for the 17th, evening of the 17th, that's so much easier to attend than afternoon meetings for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you again for all the hard work on this.
Absolutely. If anything does change, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. With Snyder Engineering tomorrow afternoon, so
And then
we'll confirm.
Marina's here and Elizabeth is here as well. If you all can help us communicate to the city as well, to the city staff and any commissioner that you happen to run into or happen to ask, we'll need an agenda item for the 18th in order to move forward. And I guess get ready to line up a couple of meetings from now until then so that we can get as many questions answered before that meeting.
Yeah, staff will submit the board item to the commission meeting.
While we're at it, any questions or any concerns with that, with the 18th from the city?
It's a regularly scheduled commission meeting, so it should be okay.
Great. So that was item number 3, correct?
Correct.
And we were going to take item number 5, which was the city item. Marina, do you want us to wait on that or? Yeah, we'll go to the next.
Yeah, we can go back to number 1 then. We are still pending Mr. Peña for item number 2, so.
Okay. All right, and just so that we know, we do have a hard stop is it at 1 or is it before 1?
One,
Okay,
yeah.
so we'll, I guess,
Me again.
let's jump to the end or jump to the bottom line perhaps.
It's okay. So we see our total operating revenues year to date. We're looking at the far right column. Total operating revenues were 92,798,458,000. Less operating expenses of 77,917,092. Left us operating income of 14,881,366. From this, we back out our non-operating expenses of 8,557,367. Leaves us income before capital contributions of 6,323,999. We then add our capital contributions of 1,641,900, gives us a change in net position of 7,965,899. When added to the net position at the beginning of the year of $445,310,943, gives us a net position at the end of the period of $453,276,842. Looking at the flow of funds, you see on line 20 that we generated sufficient revenue to cover our net of our cash transfer to the city of $3,798,766. We generated $10,766,368 for transfers out. That covered our operating sub-account, the fuel adjustment of $2,136,244, improvement fund CIP funding of $3,711,839, and Resaca CIP funding of $149,910, leaving PUB surplus year to date of $4,768,375. And on our very last, our statement of cash and investments or demand accounts, you see on line 9 in the improvement fund, we have a footnote that includes the $29 million Tenasca equity fund. It is still in the bank intact in our improvement fund. Any questions on the financials?
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
Joseph, anything?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. So item number 2, I know Ben and his team. Okay,
They did
Well-
confirm earlier this week that they would be here, but
why don't we jump into that item anyways, because I think one of the things that we wanted to address there was the issue of the interest, correct? Mike?
yeah, sure. Sure we can. So, the BMA report of the agreed upon procedures regarding the review or accounting review of the Tenasca Equity Fund was presented and accepted by the board at the March 8th board meeting. So one of the items, scope that they were looking at was to recalculate the interest that was earned on the $29 million since it was first collected. And so they did confirm that the analysis or calculations that staff had made were accurate at $2,082,611. So at the March 9th, City of Brownsville and BPUB joint subcommittee, the members did bring up the fact that they thought that the $2 million should be included as part of the distribution to the board. We have included a board agenda item for board consideration on Monday. And so it's going to be up to the board.
Have we run through how that would be allocated? I mean, obviously, the interest was generated, the ratepayers that paid into the TEF account earlier theoretically generated more interest than the ones that paid in at the very end. So if we were to include that, would we need any, special adjustments or calculations in order to fairly distribute that?
That would be very hard to calculate over the years, and yeah. By customer,
Well, no, I
by
just mean
year.
weighted in such a way so that it's applied correctly. I mean, if you were going to distribute that 2 million, I assume you're going to put it in the same pot as the 29. correct?
Right.
And so then it would be allocated, in what way? The same as the rest?
The simplest way would be to just the same way we would distribute the 29 million. Because otherwise, I mean, we've got customers that left the system in between the years, and so having to reallocate that interest to the customer every single year, it would be difficult.
Okay. So the recommendation there would be just to.
To distribute along with the 29, just the way we distribute, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what the discussion was, and I don't think the finance committee is making a specific recommendation on that, but personally, I think that should be included in the calculation as well. So I would suggest just running those numbers so that we have that in the event, again, that the board makes a decision to include that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay. I mean, I would just add that the $2 million, as per the bond ordinance, any interest that's earned in the improvement fund gets transferred into our plant fund, which is our general fund, operating fund. And so those funds would have been used either in O&M during those periods, those years, or it would have flowed into surplus and would have been accounted for as a cash contribution to CIP. So that money would have been spent. The recommendation, if the board decides to approve that, to include the $2 million as part of the distribution, we would then recommend that the $2 million comes out of the surplus in the improvement fund,
No,
rather than current revenues.
I understand that money was not kept in the same account as the
Mhm.
$29 million. However, again, I'm not speaking for the finance committee or for the rest of the board, speaking for myself.
Yeah.
I think the fair thing to do would be to include that in.
Okay. And if we were to include it as part of the distribution, I would say that it'd be best if we do it net of the city's transfers, because 10% of that went directly to the city. So that would mean that we've got $1,874,000 available.
And that was outlined in the BML.
Yes, it was.
What, are you able to share some of the thoughts or some of the points that were discussed, Joseph, or the feedback that you all got at the committee?
Yeah, so I think Mike hit on it pretty well. Everybody was very interested in knowing what the effects would be in distributing that money out. So the 1.8. We do need to communicate very clearly. Again, communicate, specifically about the city transfer and the fact that, we're distributing 1.8 million. And so I think that's necessary just to explain to people.
That's in the BML report, correct?
The
The city transfer portion?
yes.
Okay, so we can point to an independent third-party report.
We can.
Showing.
You mean the 10% off of the total revenue that got generated off the,
So.
yeah,
Just to be able to show that there's an independent third-party report that is noting that the interest was generated, but a percentage of that was then transferred to the city in accordance with the bond ordinance. And so what would be added to the distribution or to the equity fund amount would be what
The net.
remained with the.
Yeah. Sounds good.
which report? I don't know if the board wishes to look at, or the committee, I'm sorry.
All right. Do we have?
Yeah, we've got.
So here we are.
There-
So
Yeah.
total earnings of 2,208,000 going to the city, so that's 1,874,350.
Right.
That would be available.
So the amount would jump from 29 million, assuming again that the
Board authorizes it.
board authorizes
Yeah.
it. It would increase from 29 million to 30,874,300.
Correct.
Is that something that has to be included or discussed with Schneider so that that's included in their report?
We brought it up with them, but yeah, no, it really depends. Once we get a decision on the 10th.
Right.
Then yeah, we can certainly relay that information to Snyder so they can include it
Well,
in the
this is
report.
coming from the surplus account, so there is a very good probability that because it's coming from a different bucket of money, that they don't have to report on it. But it's worth asking, worth checking. I'd
It doesn't hurt. right?
rather have that verified, yeah.
Yeah, the rating agencies are gonna wanna know the full distribution.
Yeah.
I would err on the side of the more conservative number, which would be including it,
Mhm.
than not, and then having to go back and going through all those motions again.
No, that is a very good point.
Will do.
All right. Well, I guess if we have any questions for Ben, we'll have to reach out via email. But I mean, I think what we wanted or what we were expecting was for him to confirm.
Confirm that number, okay.
Great. Anything else on that item, Mike?
No?
So that's item number 2. We've covered item number 3, do we have the city ready for item number 5?
Yes.
Everyone's here for the city? All right, well, then let's go ahead and jump to item number 5, and we're going to leave item number 4 pending the completion of this item. Again, we have a hard stop at 1 o'clock. We will no longer have quorum, and we'll need to adjourn the meeting at that time.
All right, so good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So on March the 9th, 23, the City of Brownsville and the BPB subcommittee held its second meeting. One of the items discussed was related to the invoices exchanged between the BPB and the City of Brownsville. So beginning in 2008, based on a memo between the city manager and the BPB general manager at the time, both entities agreed not to charge each other for minor things. So at the time, BPB stopped invoicing the City of Brownsville for work orders done on their behalf. These three services have escalated over the years and are no longer minimum in cost. The 2008 agreement may not be 100% legal, and it is contrary to Section 33E of the bond ordinance regarding free service. And so in November of 2022, some of the board had directed us to abide by the bond ordinance and not provide any free services. So as such, PB began submitting invoices to the city for any work request that was being done by PPB. As of the end of March, BPB has invoiced the city $16,988.25 for 4 different work orders which still remain unpaid. So the first work order was for installation and repair of some fiber optic in the amount of $7,102. That work was completed as an emergency. And the other 3 work orders have not been started at all, pending the contribution of construction from the City of Brownsville. So at the subcommittee, the COB, CFO, and myself were directed to develop an equitable solution for both parties that could then be memorialized through a memorandum of understanding between the BPB board and the city commission. The direction was to develop an equitable agreement, which would include a cap that one entity isn't being charged more than the other. So both myself and the City of Brownsville CFO met once and exchanged ideas. We are still in the stage of gathering information, and we do intend to meet again soon. I would like to point out that the BPB has the authority to deduct payments for City of Brownsville services from the gross cash transfer made to the City of Brownsville as per the language in the bond ordinance, and we can go over that just a little bit. So bond counsel has provided a legal opinion to that fact. Here we have the 2008 letter between the BPB and City of Brownsville. The letter does reference in here the invoices paid to the City of Brownsville back in 2007 totaled about $100,000. And so I just want to highlight those amounts have increased significantly since then. Here we have a City of Brownsville work order detail history from 2019 to March of 2023. This is pretty much the same format that we present monthly to the board every month at the board meetings. So over this time, we can see we provided about $2 million in expenditures that have been incurred by BPB on behalf of the City of Brownsville for capital-related projects. Now, this doesn't include any other free or discounted services that are provided through the normal operations and maintenance. That's the information that we're still working on to make part of the agreement or the understanding that we're going to come up to. So this report also reports the billed services of the City of Brownsville. Here again, totaling the $16,988.25. So as mentioned, the first work order was completed.
16 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. 16,000. I'm going too fast. I got to slow down.
That makes a
It's a good thing that it's reported up there. So $16,988.25. So the other 3 work orders are for some pole relocations and installation of security lights that are still pending. So now the city manager has requested if BPUB could continue as we have been with the 2008 agreement and not bill the city until the policy change is agreed upon. So we are asking the finance committee to provide some guidance. We are taking this item to the full board on April the 10th for the consideration. Now, the rest of the presentation in here is pretty much just informational purposes. Here we got some of the bond ordinance language. Section 19 pretty much tells us that the amount of the funds to be transferred in accordance with the provisions of the subsection shall be reduced by any amounts owed by the issuer as described in Section 33E. Section 33E talks about the no-fee service. And it does say that payment of the reasonable value thereof shall be made to the board or shall be deducted from the amount of funds that would otherwise be transferred to the issuer's general fund pursuant to this ordinance. So we have that authority under the bond ordinance to deduct. We haven't done that. We don't intend to do that unless we get board approval for that, of course. Now we did, like I mentioned, we did get bond counsel's opinion, so their opinion. So as long as the services to the city are charged for our normal and customary charges that would apply equally to a utility customer, then Section 19A and Section 33E of the bond ordinance apply, and we can deduct those from the cash transfer. Here we just show for reference again, just the history of some BPUB payments to the city. We were paying for the event center rental fee. I know we were not billing them for anything. They were billing us. We did pay some of those costs over time. So we do have some representatives here from the city of Brownsville. So I don't know if I would invite them to come up and.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've had some wonderful discussions with Miguel going through, a proposal to come up with an equitable solution. But in the interim, as we're developing plans and coming up with a fair way.
Sorry, can I ask you to introduce yourself just for everybody in the audience?
Oh, sure. My name's Michael Delmore. I'm the CFO with the city.
And you, just because I think it's kind of cool for everybody to know, you just started only a few months, right?
I've been here a little bit over two months, and great group of people in the city, great group of people in the community, and it's been a welcome change, the friendliness of the Hispanic culture, and it's great to see the city grow.
Well, and welcome to Brownsville. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
And with that, with the great culture, working with Michael's been actually a pleasure, receptive to ideas, and so we can come up with a plan that makes sense using numbers. However, until that's developed, we're asking the commission to consider the safety of the citizens. A lot of the work orders that we're talking about involve the infrastructure of lighting, and it is public safety, and just asking if you would consider the city manager's request to continue to do those minor work orders until we can reach a conclusion and an equitable plan. Our budget is developed in advance of the year, and often it's hard to pick up even extra smaller dollars as we're strapped with property taxes and sales tax having to pay for everything.
I would like to point out that as approved on May 1st, 2021 in special election on charter amendments, it was approved that the citizens of the city of Brownsville recognize that collaboration between the Public Utilities Board and the city of Brownsville is advantageous and beneficial through the coordination of planning and policy issues for the purposes of the common goals of eliminating duplication of services, creating administrative efficiency, providing for joint service efforts, and ensuring quality of service at the lowest cost in terms of possible utility rates and tax rates. And I think in the spirit of the collaboration of this policy that we have been practicing since 2008, and the fact that it really has not affected, from what I understand, from what was previously discussed between our city attorney and bond counsel, your bond ratings, and the fact that we're not talking about a significant amount. We're in the middle of a budgetary season, so we were to have to endure general fund impact that would require an amendment to our budget. What was suggested during the subcommittee is that we work together to find what really that is, and really as a policy, the policy board members, the mayor and the city commission is my policy board, and the policy board for the citizens of Brownsville. You all are the policy board of the utility, that we come together and have our CFOs work together on what we believe is fair and equitable, efficient for our community. I would also say that the city of Brownsville does provide services at a subsidized rate that to the PUB, and we're happy to do that, from landfill rates to also we have a specific crew member paving crew just for PUB. Now, you all, that's the only thing that we invoice you all because it's a specific paving crew for you versus, having to go third party out. We provide that service. And also we do not include with that equipment costs or anything of that nature. So there's some subsidized costs and reduced costs that allows for efficiency that the city of Brownsville does provide. And we're happy to do that as we work collaboratively with you all.
So just a quick question, this 16,000, now I'm thinking 16 million. It was 16,000 something, right?
Correct.
That's a cost incurred by a contractor, not even the city of Brownsville. So I don't see why this particular one, the lighting is a whole separate subject and we should talk about that. But if the 16,000 was due to an error caused by a contractor, why is this even a problem?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is just the work that the PUB crews do.
No, let me elaborate on that. I think what Dr. Holman is elaborating to is that one of the invoices happened to be for damages caused by a contractor who was working out at one of the projects. And so on an emergency basis, we went ahead and made those repairs. And so that's one of the things that the city, through their whatever program they have in place, like if somebody damages any PUB system, we go back and bill any of the person who caused that damage. I'm not sure what the process is at the city. I don't want to speak from behalf of the city, but that's what Dr. Holman is alerting to is this is the bill that was of damage that was caused by somebody hitting the fiber line that the PUB went back and did some work, one of the items.
And I would say that's a special circumstance. We can look at that, but the remaining is not that. The remaining is what services that we were in.
Some temporary locations and security lighting.
Right.
Okay,
Installation.
so we could separate that amount and get just an idea of if that's going to be paid or not. I don't think.
I know we don't have a problem with that. I mean, if it's a isolated incident, I can work with you all to isolate that. I think it was 6,000 or 7,000.
$7,102.
Okay, there you go. To me, that's an isolated incident. We can pay that. The thing is, like, a change in policy in general would have to go to the mayor and city commission and to your board. And so we're more concerned with the policy change
Right.
and the impact to our budget.
Thank you, Helen, for.
I think we are as well, right? I mean,
Sure.
our job is to focus more on the policy. And I don't think the $16,000 invoice is urgent, obviously, given the size of PUB's budget and the size of the city's budget. But I think it does open up an important conversation, which is, for example, with this being part of, this being a bond covenant, whatever MOU gets, put in place, make sure that it's done in such a way that we we account for it in whatever way necessary so that we're not violating a covenant that we have with our bondholders. And I'm sure you guys can figure out a way to look at it and work that out. But I think also, going to policy, it'd be important to understand, why that covenant was put in there in the first place, perhaps, right? And if there's a conversation that should be had about what costs should be borne by the ratepayer and what costs should be borne by the taxpayer. And again, I'm not suggesting that PUB or City of Brownsville have the right, the right way to approach that. But I think it's a conversation that should probably be had. And it sounds like at the committee meeting, it was agreed that the CFOs were gonna work this out and bring a proposal to both entities, or is that where we are now?
Yes, that's my understanding that they were beginning to meet. What I would request is subtracting out the fiber line, the 7,000 and change, we'll pay that. But I think what I would ask is that we continue with the same policy we've been implemented since 2008 until such time our CFOs come to an agreement and it's taken to your policy board in mind, understanding, the possible bond covenant needs and ensuring that that doesn't affect that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the spirit of working together, nobody's against, I don't think there's any issue with collaborating on that. Again, I'd ask that the covenant be looked at carefully, so that, again, however it's being accounted for, if it's not being done correctly, it be done correctly so that we're not violating a covenant. And it may be as simple as just creating an invoice, even if it's not paid, but making sure that we are complying with an agreement that we've entered into, and an ordinance that's been passed by the city of Brownsville.
Absolutely.
And so policy-wise,
Our concern too is to make sure that we're taking the best interests of the public.
Yeah.
And that we're, providing services to the public at the lowest cost possible.
Yeah.
And with that, staying within the boundaries of the rules and regulation and paying attention to public safety.
No, I agree with you. I just want to make sure that we're clear, though. Ultimately, somebody has to bear the cost. And so I think that's where the conversation should be had, and again, transparently and with as much input as possible, as to what costs should be borne by the ratepayer and what costs should be borne by the taxpayer. And so perhaps there are some line items that fall under, hey, it's okay for that cost to be assigned to the ratepayer, but maybe some aren't. And I don't know if that's, look, this bond ordinance was drafted almost 20 years ago, I think. And so I don't know what the thinking was when that was put in there. But I think it's a good conversation to have. And Ellen, as you mentioned, the charter clearly states that we're both entities are mandated to work together and try and cooperate to the benefit of the community. This is a great example. It's just a discussion that we have to have and realize that we have a covenant in place that we also have to respect. So I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to weigh in on that. But I want to make sure that it's addressed.
And there's other things that and I know that Marilyn and I have talked about, or we've mentioned in the past with the predecessor, is even like vehicles that you auction or equipment that you auction, our equipment's older. So even able to have, the ability to buy those at a lower cost prior to going to auction. It's some of those things that can also save taxpayer money. And it's something that maybe, doesn't meet some standards that y'all have, or you have the ability to change the fleet. And so it's those types of things that I think that there's other things that we can find that maybe don't really have a specific, invoice attached to it, other than if you're going to auction equipment and we can use it, then because there's a lot of backlog for us, then, it's those types of things as well, where we can find efficiencies that way, that maybe have nothing to do with this invoice or something.
No, I think it's a great discussion to have. I think, the problem with the previous memorandum is, and Patricio hinted at this, is transparency. Our ratepayers and our taxpayers are not always one and the same. People who pay electricity only, bear a different burden than people who pay water only. And so getting to understand exactly what PUB is doing, what the city is doing, what cost burdens each group is taking on would be extremely, extremely valuable. I don't yes, we do need to work together. I don't know if I want to make a change right now based on convenience for billing, but I think it's something we should talk about at the board meeting and see what the whole board thinks. But I know we have at least one commission candidate. Sorry, I only recognize one here, and so there seems to be this desire from most of the candidates, I think, for mayor, for commission, to have PUB reduce rates as much as possible, to operate as efficiently as possible. And I think so part of that discussion is going to have to be, what is our relationship with the city and how should we factor that into rates?
Well, and not just a matter of concern for candidates or for, commission members or for PUB board members, but I think the community in general, just like the city of Brownsville is working, day and night to try and reduce the tax burden for the community. I think we have a mandate as well to try and reduce the rates for ratepayers. And so again, I think it speaks to the importance of being able to have those conversations and just be able to do it, hand in hand. I think Helen, I think that's what you're.
Yes, absolutely. I think, to us, it's not a convenience. It's actually a change of policy from what has been practiced since 2008. So we would like to work with you all and say, if there's a change with a policy, there should also be something memorialized with that change. And so that language is, I believe, will be required from the mayor and the city commission, and I'm sure as well as your board. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
So here again, Chair, we are taking this to the full board for consideration. That's all I've got. I know we're in the heels of 1 o'clock, so
Yep.
we've covered the major items.
Yeah, my only suggestion there, again, not as a formal recommendation from the committee, but the personal recommendation is that we take a look at that covenant and, taking into account what the city is requesting, look for a way to, again, meet our covenant and at the same time accommodate their request, if there's a way to do so, right? And that way, there's it'll give us time to have those discussions and be able to arrive at a solution that's transparent and in the best interest of the community, of both our ratepayers and our taxpayers.
Exactly.
I don't know if that requires getting the attorneys involved or not, but perhaps.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to reach out to bond counsel.
And
that one
see if
first.
there's something that can temporarily be put in place while we have those conversations and arrive at a more permanent solution. That again, it respects the agreements that we've entered into, not only with the city, but also with our bondholders.
Understood?
I do want to add something is that, thank you so much for the consideration. I know that this is within my authority, but my only concern was the violation of ordinance. And in violating the ordinance, and there are other associated penalties that can come in. And so taking the helm now as the CEO here for the Brownsville Public Utilities Board and in effort of transparency, something needs to be memorialized. What has been reversed as policy was a matter of practice and not policy, and what was matter of practice is not necessarily policy. So I'm trying to right now make sure that all of our books are correctly identified and ensure that everything is identified. So why I'm bringing such a small item to the board is requesting that. So I know in violation of the covenant.
No, absolutely. And Marilyn, you're absolutely right. You definitely don't want to violate any covenants with any of your contracts, any of your agreements, especially in this case, where a potential default could be very
Correct.
costly to the community and to our ratepayers and to the city as well. But so my suggestion there would be simply to look for a temporary solution perhaps that would allow you to continue with these conversations and at the same time feel or rest assured that you're not in violation of any of those covenants. I don't know. Maybe there might. I guess what I'm suggesting is maybe look for a safe harbor, right? And be able to say with this agreement or with this with this board approved action, we're covered until we reach the final agreement and the final language.
Mhm.
Because the last thing you want is somebody pointing out that you're in violation of your covenants and then pursuing action
Correct.
against the utility.
Mr. Sampaio, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was just advised that the person who wanted to make a public comment actually sent the request for it yesterday. So
Okay.
she was within the time period. If you want to allow her 5 minutes to to make her public comment at this point.
Yeah,
If she's still
absolutely.
here.
Is that individual here?
No idea.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And we also have Mr. Pena. So you all want to ask him about the interest or?
Okay. Well, quite honestly,
think
we're
we're
at
limited on
12:57. I know Joseph has a hard exit. Are you able to stick around for 2 minutes?
We need
before-
to do the public comment, so that needs to happen, and then I'll
So
go
at this
after that.
point, we will wrap up our items. We're going to leave number 4 pending. We're going to leave closed meeting pending, and we're going to go back to public comment to allow the individual that submitted the public comment request the 5 minutes to speak. Do you have the name of the individual?
Susana Rubalcaba.
Susana Rubalcaba?
Susan Rubalcaba, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I heard that and I submitted it yesterday. I'm like, no, I was within 24 hours.
We apologize for that.
This young lady right here, your name? I would like to compliment Monica before I start my speech. I went to the last PubCap meeting and Monica was excellent with the people, the citizens that were there. I think it was just a couple of us, myself and another lady. And she was excellent in explaining the processes and what was going on with the bond. And I wanted to say thank you and let Marilyn know that she was excellent in that meeting. In early October, Brownsville citizens were shocked by the release of the CRA forensic audit results related to the Tenasca deal. I'm not here to rehash all of the concerns and complaints, but I am here, however, to voice concerns regarding the lack of transparency and accountability. You spoke about that just now in the meeting, which was very impressive. I'm happy to hear that you guys are working towards that now. As of today, though, however, I have not received a PRA request that I made back in October of 2022. Early December, I was forced to pay a deposit of $1,260 to have that information released. And since then, I have received one partial response on January 17th. I have contacted records management on multiple occasions and I get no response to the status of the rest of my request. The people have been patient. We have waited for the bond ordinance requirements to have the 29 million returned, now possibly the extra interest, which I am in 100% agreement. We haven't seen any proof that these audits have been forwarded to law enforcement, the local DA or FBI for an investigation. We've only been given a verbal assurance, which, as you can imagine, doesn't have much weight with us anymore. As the layers get peeled back of the Tenasca fiasco daily, the people become more upset. We were all taken advantage of, we were lied to, manipulated, and deceived. We are waiting for you to do the right thing in the end, but do not forget that the process getting there should be just as transparent. Mr. Sampaio, you mentioned that a few minutes ago. I appreciate that. My experience with the PIR that I requested is showing me that the PUB executives, the board, the commission, and the committee still doesn't have the primary objective to regain the people's trust. The PIR information shouldn't be such a struggle to get. The meeting times, this 12 noon, it makes it very difficult for the working class to always be present. But please do not think for a minute we are not watching every move and waiting for repair of the damage done. Thank you for your time.
Before I leave, does anybody have any information on the status of that request? Okay. If we could get that information and feed that back, that would be very useful.
All right, so it is 1:01 PM. We've got a hard stop at this time for lack of quorum. So for everybody who was here today and was able to make it, thank you very much for your time and your presentations. I'm sticking around afterwards, so if there are any questions from staff or any further discussion, I'd be happy to take those questions or have those discussions. But at this time, 1:01 PM, this meeting of the Finance Committee for BPUB is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yes, I think she's back.